Somewhere in Rome, on any given day, roughly 1 in 4 women of childbearing age was on her period. There were no pads, no tampons, no pain relievers that actually worked, no real privacy in homes where entire families, sometimes slaves too, shared 1 or 2 rooms. And yet, life didn't stop. Women still worked, still walked miles to the market, still showed up to religious festivals, some of which they were specifically banned from attending because of it. So, how did Roman women actually get through this every single month for their entire adult lives? Let's start with the basic problem. What did Roman women physically use? The most common answer was rolled wool or soft cloth, worn tucked against the body and changed and washed by hand. Wool was already everywhere in Roman households, spun, woven, and worked by women daily, so repurposing scraps of it wasn't unusual, it was just practical. In Egypt, under Roman rule, there's evidence women used softened papyrus, rolled and shaped for the same purpose, one of the earliest documented forms of what we'd now recognize as a tampon-like device. There was no disposal system. Obviously, everything was washed and reused over and over for years. That meant regular contact with blood-soaked cloth, hand-washed in whatever water was available, often the same water used for cooking and drinking in poor households. Sanitation, by our standards, was almost non-existent. For wealthier women, the experience could look completely different: private rooms, servants to handle washing, and access to imported herbs for pain. For poorer women, and especially for enslaved women, there was often no privacy, no rest, and no accommodation at all. Whatever the task was that day, it still had to get done. To understand how Romans treated menstruation, you have to remember their entire medical system was built on the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health meant these fluids stayed balanced. Under that theory, a period wasn't just a normal biological process, it was the body's natural way of releasing excess blood to stay in balance. Some Roman and Greek physicians, including the influential Dr. Galen, believed menstruation was actually good for a woman's health, specifically because it purged the body the way bloodletting did for men. Which meant, strangely, that a missed or irregular period wasn't seen as neutral, it was seen as dangerous. Doctors believed unreleased blood could travel through the body and cause illness elsewhere, including, they claimed, the mind. This idea shows up constantly in ancient medical writing, and it's part of where ideas about women's hysteria, a word literally rooted in the Greek word for uterus, first took hold. For period pain and irregularity, Roman medicine reached for the same herbal toolkit used for everything else: pennyroyal, rue, and other plants believed to bring on a period. Some of these had real physiological effects. Several were also, in high enough doses, actively toxic and were used quietly for reasons beyond just menstrual pain. This is where Roman beliefs get genuinely strange. The famous Roman scholar Pliny the Elder wrote that menstrual blood could sour wine, blunt razors, kill bees, rust metal, and cause crops to wither. So in Roman thought, menstrual blood wasn't just unclean. It was treated as something close to a supernatural force, dangerous and powerful at the same time, capable of both destroying and healing depending on how it was handled. That belief had real consequences. Women on their periods were barred from certain religious rituals and temples, considered ritually impure at exactly the moment Roman religious life required purity. This wasn't a quiet social preference, it was often written into religious law. Some historical sources suggest menstruating women in parts of the Roman world were expected to keep some distance during their cycle, not locked away, but socially set apart in small, constant ways. What you could touch, where you could go, what you were allowed to take part in that week. None of this was based on anything physically true. But because Pliny's writing was treated as scientific authority for centuries, Ideas like these didn't just fade, they echoed through Western medicine and folklore for almost 2,000 years after he wrote them down. There was no aspirin, no ibuprofen, no heating pad plugged into a wall, so what did Roman women actually do about cramps? The most common remedy was heat, a heated stone, wrapped cloth, or warm compress pressed against the abdomen, which does genuinely help relax muscle cramping, even without any understanding of why. But for most women, especially those without money or status, the honest answer is there wasn't much relief at all. You worked through it, rested when you physically couldn't avoid it, and treated period pain the same way you treated most physical discomfort in the ancient world, as something to endure, not something to fix. Here's the part that's hard to separate from the rest of the story. In Rome, a woman's menstrual cycle wasn't treated as private health information. It was treated as public, functional information because Roman society valued women, to a large degree, for their ability to produce heirs. Roman girls were often married very young, sometimes as young as 12, frequently right around when menstruation began, because marriage was tied directly to fertility, not adulthood in the way we think of it now. A woman's cycle was something doctors, husbands, and even matchmakers might discuss and track, not because of care for her comfort, but to judge her fertility and readiness for childbearing. Irregular periods weren't just a medical concern, they could affect a woman's entire social standing, her marriage prospects, and her value within her household. It's worth sitting with that for a second. For many Roman women, the same biological process that today is treated as private and personal was, in their world, a matter of open household discussion, tied directly to their worth as a wife and a mother. It's easy to focus on everything Rome got wrong here, and a lot of it was wrong, sometimes harmfully so, but a few things hold up better than you'd expect. The reusable cloth and wool method Roman women used isn't actually that different in principle from modern reusable pads and period underwear technology that's made a genuine comeback in the last decade for exactly the same reasons: cost, accessibility, and reducing waste. Heat therapy for cramps is still recommended by doctors today, a 2,000-year-old Roman remedy that turns out to be legitimately effective, just without the modern packaging. And despite the superstition and restriction, most ordinary Roman women simply lived their lives around it, working, running households, raising children, the same practical resilience that got them through everything else in a world without modern medicine. So, how did Roman women handle their period? With reused cloth, herbal remedies that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't, a medical system that saw their bodies as mysterious and even dangerous, and a society that valued their fertility more than their comfort. And through all of that, they kept working, kept raising families, kept the entire empire running 1 month at a time with none of the tools we take for granted today. If you want to see how Roman medicine handled everything else the body could throw at it, I've got a full video on that too. Links right there.